Welcome to SportsBeat KC, the Kansas City Star Sports podcast, presented by
Underdog. I'm not singing anymore because I've been told by our most faithful listener that maybe that's not my strong suit, but just remember the Underdog theme is most important. There's no need to fear. Underdog is here.
Do you know or remember who was the voice of Underdog?
I don't. I remember Sweet Polly Purebred. I remember, Simon Bar Sinister, the villain, but I don't remember the voice.
It was Wally Cox. Do you remember
Of course
Wally
it was,
Cox?
yes. Sam Wally Cox was, no, I'm kidding.
That's too much information for our sports show.
But not for you and me.
No. So that was the voice of Vahe Gregorian. Sam McDowell also here. I'm Blair Kirchhoff. We're the Kansas City Star. We're going to talk about the Chiefs and their third preseason game here on Friday at home against the Chicago Bears. Later in the show, we'll talk about college football with Kansas and Kansas State opening up this weekend as well. So we're in between games 2 and 3, and in previous years for the Chiefs, that would have meant getting ready to see a lot of third and fourth team players trot out on the field. Chris Oladokun started the preseason game number 3 last year, and Ian Book came in to replace him in the second half. That will not be the case this time, as Andy Reid has said. Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, Chris Jones, the Stars are going to start and play, I would suspect, a series or two, at least through the first quarter. Why is this happening?
Well, I think it's about what Andy Reid can't say. I mean, you look at the game in Seattle last week that Vahe and I attended. It rained most of the game. It's a turf field. So I think if you're going to sit the starters one game, why not sit them the game that probably has the most injury risk? And let's face it, the Chiefs walked out of that game with quite a few injuries. I'm not saying that's necessarily correlated, but it without a doubt has a heightened injury risk in that game. And I don't think Andy Reid's going to say that. He hasn't said that. And there could be something else at play, which is you only have one home game. It's the oddity of it being the last game. And so I could see the organization wanting Patrick Mahomes to play at home at some point in the preseason, and this offers the only opportunity. The irony of it is, first game in Brazil, that Seattle field might have been their best preparation for it.
Right.
Given those field conditions last year, that actually might be the game. Hey, you're going to probably not play on the best, most immaculate field that you do in the NFL season. But that's my best guess as to why he's changed course, because the answer he gave did not make a whole lot of sense compared to what he's done in past years.
I remain a little baffled by the preseason approach of being so sort of tight-lipped about everything. We were joking about this the other day. We had the sort of Kansas City Star sponsored post-game press conference because I was the only one there from the Kansas City media asking Andy questions. Yeah, and unfortunately it was gruff Andy instead of fun Andy. And I just asked him, I said, so can we assume Patrick's gonna start this week?
First of all, you got to back up. In his intro, he said the starters were going to play. Yeah. Then you ask him a follow-up, are they going to play? Well, we'll see. Yeah. It's almost like, well, I guess I shouldn't have released that information.
So I don't know what the advantage is in a meaningless game to playing sort of this cat and mouse stuff, but so be it. That's practice. It's preseason for him too. He's practicing his nonsense for later, where we don't know anything that's really behind the scenes. So I do wonder this: if the last preseason game were up closer against the first regular season game, would they have made this shift? Probably not, right? I mean, they want to have a nice buffer before the regulars play again.
Yeah, that's the one risk I think of this is if somebody has a hamstring strain, if you have a high ankle sprain, something that's in that 4 to 6 week window, you've lost a week now, which you're getting to a point where losing a week is losing a game itself. I just think that the inverse of the higher risk of actually getting injured is I think this is the right play to make. And I think his rationale was that he wanted to give those guys a chance to evaluate the fringe roster guys, the guys who are on the 53-man roster bubble. Well, you could have done that this week, and that's why I said that doesn't really add up as a reason to suddenly change course, because that's been an annual thing. You're always evaluating these guys. This is the first time you're doing this, though.
But he did start the starting offensive line in this game. Gardner Minshew, the backup quarterback, played, good for him to get some snaps behind the starting offensive line. So this will be the first time in the preseason in the Andy Reid era, as far as I can tell, that the Chiefs will have started their starting offensive line in all the preseason games. Now, that doesn't mean they got a ton of snaps. I think it was 10 one game and 11 the other. I can't remember.
And Jawan Taylor's set.
Yes, that's right.
So far. We don't know if he's going to play on Friday. I think that's one of the names to be on the lookout for because he hasn't played in the preseason yet.
So how important is it? How important will it have been for the Chiefs to have played their, Josh Simmons and Kingsley Suamataia together for 3 preseason games?
I think that's been the most important development. We've gone through, like, what do you want to see in game 1, before game 1, what do you want to see in game 2, and now what do you want to see in game 3? And the answer's been consistent for all 3. Kingsley Suamataia needs to play, and he needs to play next to Josh Simmons specifically. And I don't think there's this risk of, if you sit Patrick Mahomes, would he get rusty before the preseason? We saw him play a playoff game with, 26 days off before that Texans playoff game last year. But to me, he's got to play behind those 2 players because he hasn't played quarterback in the NFL with Josh Simmons as his blindside protector and with Kingsley Suamataia at left guard. And, one of the major takeaways from the Seattle game that you and I were at, Vahe, is that Kingsley Suamataia needs some reps. And we're still uncertain what that's going to look like in the regular season. And the only way to eliminate that uncertainty is by getting him more reps in the preseason now.
And just to amplify your point, he needs the reps, but they need to establish some kind of rhythm among themselves. There's a triangle there, right, of Patrick, Kingsley, and Josh Simmons. Like, how do they work together specifically that you can't really simulate in practice?
So I went into both preseason games with my eyes on the offensive line and really focusing in on especially Kingsley Suamataia. But my takeaway from the Seattle game was just how poor the defense played in this game. They gave up 477 total yards and 268 on the ground. And yes, just like on the offense, without Mahomes and Kelsey playing, you didn't have Chris Jones, you didn't have Nick Bolton or Trent McDuffie playing on the defensive side. But it was kind of alarming to see Seattle running backs just shredding the Chiefs' defense, the defensive line. You guys were there, Vahe. What was going on?
Well, and you also add in Drew Tranquill to that. So, there's an interior core in a way that's missing. But they can't have that happen. That depth has got to be better than what it is. And also, it's not like the entire starting defense wasn't out there. Those are key guys, sure. But to get run over like that, I don't know if Sam will agree with me, but we were talking during the game a little bit about how they took out so many guys. It's a little hard to process what this really means in the big picture. But by game's end, it seemed to me they've got an issue until they can demonstrate otherwise. I think that looked like a vulnerability.
Yeah, for the entire Steve Spagnuolo era in Kansas City until last year, this was a really bad run defense. They averaged finishing 25th in the league against the run until last year when they became 7th again in yards per carry defending the run. I think when you look at whatever team you cover, you're constantly saying, how can they improve in this area they were not good in? But you can't just assume they're going to be good at something because they were good last year, especially when the previous 6 years tells you this is a unit and a style of defense that has struggled against the run. I think Nick Bolton not playing is a significant absence, but Steve Spagnuolo said it to us and you wrote about it, Blair. He said it to us a couple days ago. Was it just yesterday, I guess, on Tuesday, that they didn't come out with intensity, and Seattle did. And that's where, if you want to be an optimist about this, it's not a bad thing the Chiefs experienced that, because I wonder if they think, hey, we figured out the run defense last year, and it's just going to carry over into 2025. And, what better time to get a reminder in a game that doesn't actually count?
I liked what Spagnuolo said about, listen, guys, Chris Jones isn't going to be on the field for every play. The Chiefs sat him in the game. He's not going. He's part of a rotation.
And Nick Bolton missed 8 games 2 years ago or something of that sort. And the reason I mentioned his absence is the most glaring. He led the NFL in stuff percentage over the last 3 years. He's really good against the run. You guys know I think they overpaid him, but he does have value, and that's it, is playing against the run. So not to have him is a big loss, but it also, like the lack of intensity, I think, is what Spagnuolo should be most concerned with, is because the guys who were in are guys who are fighting for jobs. Like some of those guys are not guaranteed to be on the 53-man roster. It's like not to come out with any punch at all, I think has to be pretty disappointing for him.
And rookies looking to impress.
Yeah.
Yeah, both sets. Excuse me. I would only add that.
Choked up about it.
Yeah, it's a little verklempt. For what it's worth, I did think Andy Reid's sort of mood after the game was disappointment. I mean, he didn't really elaborate on much. Sometimes in those scenes, he'll be a little more animated, and it seemed to me afterwards that he was really disappointed and maybe not quite concerned, but disappointed.
Well, let me put this out there, too, as a possibility for the way the game unfolded. The Chiefs' preseason schedule, Sam alluded to it earlier, 2 road games and then a home game, right? And they go Saturday, Friday, which meant short week from game 1 to game 2. Both of those games out west. 3-hour plane ride to Phoenix for game 1. They get back at 6, 7 in the morning from there. Short week, even farther trip to Seattle game 2. And I don't know if the energy was there. And as Sam said, Seattle came out motivated and really thought this was an important moment, important game. They played their starters and thought it was they put an emphasis on this game.
I think that is a reasonable factor in all this. I really do, and it to the broader point there. Why are they playing West Coast preseason games? Why are they coming back at 6 and 7 a.m.
twice
for games that don't matter? Twice in a row in a scrunched-in time frame. Again, something else. Sam and I had some time in the press box the other day to talk about.
Map out an entire preseason schedule. Yes.
Yeah, and we figured. The rotation needs to be Chicago, Indianapolis, Nashville, Dallas,
Houston, Minnesota. Yeah.
Central time zone.
90-minute flight.
Opponents only.
Same time zone.
Are there enough West teams to give them their own preseason schedule, or do we just not care about what
I was going to say, first of all, we don't care about what those teams
That's on
do.
them.
But, yeah, there are. I mean, you could play I guess the tricky part would be when those two conferences match up against each other in the regular season, because obviously you don't want to play a regular season opponent during the preseason. But, I don't know, there just has to be a better solution. I think one of them is, why would you want to start a game at 9 o'clock local time in the opposing team's market? Certainly you want that market tuning into the game for TV. So it was confusing. This preseason schedule has been confusing.
We haven't had an opportunity to speak to the Rashee Rice news of last week, and I wanted to get to that. What we know now is the NFL set a hearing date for Rashee Rice's case, and that is September 30th, which, if that's what happens, he will have been on the field for 4 games, the first 4 games for the Chiefs, a tough 4-game stretch. The Eagles are in there, the game in Brazil, of course, division opponent, the Chargers, etc. But now it's a matter of the NFL seeming to want a longer penalty, maybe, 8 to 10 games for Rashee Rice, and the NFL Players Association supporting Rice. The Chiefs don't have anything to do with this now. It's the NFLPA that is pleading Rice's case to the NFL. They obviously want something shorter than that. So how is this going to unfold? What is there a chance that this could be settled before the season starts, and maybe he starts the season suspended?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's clear. I mean, most of these suspensions actually are settlements. They just never get publicized as such. They get publicized as the NFL handing down a punishment, but frequently, Willie Gay's suspension a few years ago was a settlement between the player and the league, and that just was released as a league handed down punishment, which is why when the news broke that this was going to go to an independent arbitrator, my first thought was, the league is really going for a long suspension. And the three of us have all spoken at length about this. There's no game link that's going to seem appropriate for this. Like, that video is horrifying to watch, and we've written about it extensively. And so I think so much time has passed. I think people are focused on, hey, this needs to be as small as possible. And look, that's the NFLPA's job. That's his representation's job with his agency, with his lawyers. That's like, all of them have that job to do. But I don't think we can lose sight of like why this is happening. And the incident itself that took place was very hard to watch. And there's people who were actually injured and like lives altered because of that. So I don't have any issue with the NFL like trying to drop the hammer on this case, especially knowing that Rashee Rice is perhaps the most recent, but certainly not the only incident of racing on a public street. And I think the NFL is in a position to potentially send a message in that case now. And Rashee Rice obviously doesn't want to be the one who's the subject of that, but I at this point, I think whatever you anticipated the suspension being, your prediction should increase now.
I think a point you made that really stuck with me, and I've been thinking about this a lot, is that it's been a while since that happened, which should have nothing to do with how it's adjudicated, if that's the right term, by the NFL. I just take myself back to when it happened. As Sam said, video is horrifying. But the single thing that will always stick with me the most is the way he kind of just slinked away without wanting to even check to see if people were hurt. It's a miracle people were hurt, but it's a miracle nobody was killed. Miracle he wasn't killed. And I get that it's hard to gauge what to do with something that could have happened by what you did instead of what did happen. But I think that needs to be part of the thinking.
Yeah.
I get a sense that Roger Goodell wants to make an example of Rashee Rice in this case.
And isn't it the easiest opportunity to do so when you have it on video?
On video, yep.
Like, that is what gives the NFL this opportunity to make Rashee Rice the example.
Okay, let's take a break. And when we come back, we will talk college football with Vahe Gregorian and Sam McDowell.
Take a swing at picking sports this baseball season with Underdog. Playing on their app is as easy as choosing higher or lower on players' stats. Get them right, and you could win up to 1,000 times your money. Sign up today using promo code KCSTAR to get a gimme pick as a part of your first cash entry, plus up to $1,000 in bonus credits when you deposit. Must be 18 plus and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. Concerned with your play? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.ncpgambling.org.
We're back on SportsBeat KC, the Kansas City Star Sports podcast, talking sports with star columnists Vahe Gregorian and Sam McDowell. I'm Blair Kirchhoff. College football kicks off Saturday with 5 games. There's 5 games across the country, and the 2 biggest ones involve schools in our backyard. Kansas State opens the college football season in Dublin, Ireland, against Iowa State, a Big 12 game right out of the chute. And later that afternoon, Kansas plays Fresno State in the, how do we call it, renovated, I guess, David Booth Stadium.
Yeah, they're trying to say it's new. It's very clearly renovated.
It's renovated.
It's the same location.
Right, same location.
Half of the old stadium's still standing.
Right,
so
No, a third.
a third.
Is it a third?
Yeah,
It is a third.
Yeah.
Let's go with renovated. You guys took a trip over there and got to see, got a preview of the stadium. Pretty cool place.
Yeah, especially if you've been in the old place.
Yeah, I think so. That's what will stand out. And that's what's kind of weird about the effect and cool about the effect is, we stood for the most part in the 2/3. And renovated actually probably isn't strong enough for the 2/3 because that was, it's on the same ground, but it was completely refashioned. But what I think is kind of cool about it, maybe it'll get old through the season, is you're standing in that kind of, state-of-the-art luxury much closer to the field, but of course you're left to stare at the remnants on the other side. So you're both reminded of what it once was while you're presumably luxuriating on the other side.
That's what TV cameras, by the way. They'll be facing the part that's not
old,
done.
Yeah. Can you imagine having the broadcast and you're talking about the new stadium and you're just looking at that?
Except this part over here you're seeing was built in 1923.
Yeah. 21.
21.
Yeah.
21. Don't shortchange it.
Yeah. But look, I really enjoyed it. I think Sam could speak for himself, but the thing that really was amazing was how much closer you are to the field. Blair, you'll remember going to Los Angeles right after the Chargers moved to Los Angeles, and SoFi Stadium was not yet open, and they played in the MLS StubHub Stadium.
StubHub Stadium, yep, soccer stadium.
So the Chiefs played NFL football in a whatever it was, 28,000, 30,000 seat stadium.
For 2 seasons.
2 seasons, and you were on top of the action in a way that
it was wonderful.
We just don't experience otherwise. And that, without being there for a game yet, it had that feeling to me. A little bit like looking at the steeps. The seats are so steep, you're worried you're going to fall forward. It had a little of that sense. So I think you've been there more than any of us. I've been there a bit more than Sam, but I think you'll really appreciate that feeling. Is that the same sort of stuff that stood out to you,
Yeah,
Sam?
the proximity for sure, but I think, what we couldn't experience that I think will actually be the biggest difference is that proximity is going to create a different environment in that stadium. Like, that distant feeling affects the volume inside the stadium. It affects the intimate feeling. So I think, I guess, the way Vahe and I were talking about it, some of these are just like bringing it into the 20th century, let alone the 21st century. But you look to the north end zone and you're on the west side, and those fans are close to you as well, rather than being behind a track. And then they eliminated the track, but those stands were still in that same spot. And Travis Goff, who gave us the tour, the athletics director at KU, called one of those seats like the worst seat in sports. And I don't know that he was wrong about that. Like, they would actually tarp off some of the seats because they didn't feel comfortable selling those views. So I think just having that feeling that you're so close to the other fans in the stadium, I really think the biggest difference is going to be the environment itself, and the players are going to feel that even while being on the field itself.
Two other quick things. The Jumbotron is now 2.5 times bigger than it was, and that's in the south end zone. It will block the view from the hill.
And the view of the hill. Which was kind of iconic for what it was, and that'll be a change. And they're looking at some possibilities of maybe having the other side of the scoreboard be visible from the hill and some things like that. But what made me think of that was part of our tour was in fact being down in the whatever the club was called at the north end zone, and it has now gone from the worst seat in sports to, if you're there standing or sitting in that club level, you better be looking out for a guy flying through the end zone after he catches a touchdown, because it's about 8 feet past the end of the end zone.
Well, they even said the photographers will have to sit down just so those people can see.
Yeah,
that's how close those seats are then to the end zone.
Yeah, there's going to be a first person, over under on who goes flying into those people. Maybe it'll be, I don't know, the Lawrence Leap. What are they going to call it? I don't know. They'll come up with something.
I'll be on the lookout for that on Saturday. So 2/3 of the stadium is renovated. The other third got a big boost recently with incredible donation from David Booth. So part of this $300 million donation to Kansas, got to be one of the largest that I've ever heard in college sports history, is going to go toward finishing the stadium and other parts of that donation earmarked for other college, KU athletic endeavors. But I was stunned by the amount. And what did you think about that?
Yeah, same thing. And I think it's $75 million of that is designated
for the stadium,
specifically for the stadium, or as a quote challenge to others to get involved. And I don't know the specifics of the numbers, but the city of Lawrence is jumping in some way, and it will be more football development stuff. Obviously, the stands themselves, but they're going to build a hotel. They've already got a conference center built into the north end zone that will be activated in October. They're also going to build 2 residence halls and a plaza out there. Again, what's kind of fascinating to me is that it's not on any new land. It's indicative of how they've reeled in the stadium itself, but this is still on the original footprint. All these other things they're adding in on there will be on the land that was already there, so they didn't have to secure anything new for it.
So the Gateway District is what the hopes and dreams of this is going to include a hotel and mixed use, right?
Yeah.
Maybe some student housing over there as well.
Yeah, two residence halls, and I asked Travis Goff specifically about whether those are intended to be athletic dorms. No, they're intended to be full residence halls, which I think is an important statement that, it's not just sports, right? I'm sure there's some, branding and PR associated with the concept, but I think they do want to demonstrate that it's supposed to be of benefit to the greater university.
Kansas State kicks off the season with an 11 a.m. Central Time kick. I guess 6 o'clock over there, I suppose, in Ireland against the Cyclones. Avery Johnson back at quarterback for the Wildcats, just as Jalen Daniels is for Kansas. So both teams have their starting quarterbacks returning. Iowa State, K-State's a 3-point favorite, I think, in this game. They've got an interesting recent history with the Cyclones. They've lost 4 or 5 to Iowa State, which is kind of neat because follow me here. Kansas has won 3 of 4 against Iowa State. Iowa State has beaten K-State 4 out of 5, and we know K-State owns KU. So quite a vicious circle happening between those 3 schools. But big game early. I mean, to have a conference game out of the chute, 2 teams that we think are going to compete for the Big 12 championships playing in August. I think the losing team is going to be really grumbling flying back over the Atlantic.
Yeah, it's sort of the nature of college football. It's the whole reason you don't typically see these big conference games early in the season is because, I mean, you lose this game, whether it's Matt Campbell or Chris Kleiman is going to have a real challenge because these are 2 teams that I think at least anticipate being in the mix for like a Big 12 title game and therefore the college football playoff. But you lose game 1, like it's hard. It's hard to come back from that in conference play. And so, I don't know, I'm really interested with both these teams we're talking about, with KU and K-State, is what's the quarterback progression? Because I think Avery Johnson is talented enough that he needs to take a step forward. And I think he's old enough that he can become a leader of that team as well. Jalen Daniels, I think, has been a leader of that team, but he took a step backward for the first time we've seen in his college career. He sort of burst onto the scene in a way that even the most diehard of KU fans were not expecting. And that gave him this persona even on campus, even with the fans, that this guy who had sort of saved the program in a way. But then for once he was a guy who disappointed in his results. And I think he's a fascinating story to follow this year because I don't think he anticipated being in Lawrence. I think he anticipated being on an NFL preseason right now. Avery Johnson has that ability, but like Jalen Daniels is right across the state is a warning that you've got to show it. Like you actually have to improve on the field. And I'm interested to see what kind of step forward Avery Johnson takes. Avery
Johnson was the quarterback that they chose to elevate as the starter over Will Howard. Remember in the bowl game a couple years ago, and all Will Howard did was go to Ohio State and win a national championship.
I still think that's the right decision, don't you?
I do. I think it was good for everybody.
Yeah.
Kansas State got their quarterback of the future and got to develop him and build around him. And Ohio State wins a national championship with a quarterback whose camp is he in? Is it the Steelers?
Steelers, yeah.
Yeah, Will Howard. So, I don't think no complaints anywhere with that one.
I'm just saying, I'm sure that K-State and Iowa State would each rather have played, a Central Arkansas or something at least before they did this, because I think it's very hard to have any kind of feel at all for certain aspects of the game that you're going to be learning about after a 9-hour flight.
I don't know that Dublin would have taken the Central Arkansas Iowa State game.
I'm saying they would have played it, pushed it. The season's going to be starting in July before we know it, so they would have pushed it back earlier if they could, or pushed that back a week farther in. But yes, you're correct about that. The thing that's interesting to me is it's a tone-setting game, and also it's immediately a matter of where you're on the rung in the conference race. But I don't know that we'll think that whoever wins this game is the team that's going to emerge as the better team later than the other team. I just think it's kind of funky that way.
There's some stat out there. It's the first. Both teams are ranked, K-State and Iowa State. It's like the first time in a week 0 game in a long, long time that you've got 2 ranked teams matching up.
Wow!
So fun to see. Be a fun game. Great way to kick off the college football season. Before we go, though, Vahe, You've spent some time in Columbia. We've talked about the established quarterbacks at KU and K-State. Missouri doesn't have that. They are still looking. Their season opens the following Thursday at home against Central Arkansas. So what's the latest on Missouri's quarterback?
From Central Arkansas, is just going from Ireland to Columbia.
Yeah, there's a reason I brought up Central Arkansas. I don't know if Eli Drinkwitz, the Missouri football coach, could be much more cryptic about this whole thing.
He'll find a way.
He's working on it. And yesterday, I didn't use this in what I wrote yesterday, but they appointed 9 captains this season. 7 of them
only 9.
Only 9. 7 of them were the ones interviewed, available for interviews yesterday. The 2 were the quarterbacks, the 2 that didn't show up, and they've only spoken once on the general media day. They have not spoken at all. So that's a little bit, I think, indicative of whatever they're trying to do to give them space. I think what seems to me to be problematic is that at least to this stage, not one of these guys has jumped out in such a way as to say he's got to be our guy. I think you could interpret a lot of things from what he said yesterday, which included that, it's the last thing he thinks of when he's going to bed. It's the first thing he thinks of when he wakes up. It's what he thinks of when he gets up to go to the bathroom in the middle of the night. But he didn't really say, he said we're going to make a choice about what to do, basically, but he didn't say we're choosing one guy.
Yeah.
So
if you remember, was it 2 years earlier that he called it a battle? And then in the opening game, and it wasn't against Central Arkansas, but probably someone that was competitive with Central Arkansas, that Brady Cook just played the first 3 quarters. And it was like, you don't have a quarterback battle. Like, Brady Cook is your guy. Which, to your point, Vahe, about the cryptic nature of which he's described this, my guess is he knows what he's going to do. And also, to your point, that doesn't necessarily mean he's picked a guy. It could be, I've decided this guy's going to play the first quarter, this guy's going to play the first half, whatever it might be.
But you think he's got it orchestrated?
Yeah, I think he knows what he's going to do.
And we're talking about Bo Pribula, the Penn State transfer, and Sam Horn, who's been in the program for this is 4th year.
Yeah,
who's coming off Tommy John surgery because he's a baseball pitcher and was drafted by the Dodgers. I think
signed.
Yeah. So he's got a baseball future.
But he was the future in Columbia when. He was a big recruit, and that was a big
four-star quarterback.
Yes, for Eli Drinkwitz, that was one of his biggest gets. And what Eli Drinkwitz has obviously been a success at Mizzou, but the one thing we've not seen yet is can he get a quarterback,
identify
and develop
a quarterback.
That quarterback.
Yeah,
and Sam Horn is his best option right now in that sense.
I think we all thought the world of Brady Cook, but he wasn't. That sort of 4-star-ish talent, right? Yeah. He was just an incredible leader with just all the guts and grit that you'd want, and sort of the ultimate guy who grew up wanting to be a Tiger, and so you can make up for a lot of things with that. But you're right, the sort of premier quarterback type is not what they've been able to quite cultivate yet.
Great conversation as always with Sam McDowell and Vahe Gregorian of the Star, and big thanks to our producers, Randy Mason and Monty Davis, to our editors, Jeff Rosen and Scott Chasen. This has been SportsBeat KC, the Kansas City Star Sports Podcast, and we'll do it again soon.